I'm Will, and welcome back to Will's Digital's, your home for everything Photoshop and composite art. Today we're going to be talking about layer masks. Layer masks are one of the backbone building blocks of Photoshop, but they really have one simple job, and that's to hide stuff. That's really all it does. It hides stuff. Now that may not sound like much, but if you're new to Photoshop, you'll be amazed at everything you can do with them just by hiding stuff. One of the things we can do with layer mask is to show depth. For instance, I've got a couple of beach pictures here. Let's put them together and make a beach scene. So over here I have a pelican. I'm going to use the object selection tool, and I'm just going to select the pelican. I have other videos on object selection, things like that, so we're not going to cover that here, but let's go over to back to the beach cover, and we'll paste him in, and we're going to make him a little bigger. So currently it looks like he's flying in front of the little structure that's there. But what if we want him to look like he flies behind the little structure? So what we need to do to make it look like he's flying behind it is make his middle not visible where the structure is. Because if he was behind it, we would see the structure but not the middle. Right now, since he's in front of it, where his body is, we see his body but not the structure. That's how we can tell. And we can do that with a layer mask. So let me show you. First thing we need to do is we're going to add a layer mask to the layer. And we do that by going down to this little Japanese flag looking thing. If you hover over it, it'll tell you layer mask. And just click it. Now, the thing to remember about a layer mask, let me explain to you how it works. The golden rule of layer masks, and the main thing you should keep in mind when you start working with them, is that white reveals and black conceals. So we notice that our mask right here is white, and everything that's white, it will show up. Well, if you remember, we had the pelican, but it's on a transparent background. So we see through everything and the pelican shows up. But if this layer mask were black, and the way to quickly turn it to black is to hold down Control or Command, depending on if you're on a PC or a Mac, and hit I. That's the inverse. So now it'll turn it black. And look, our pelican went away because when we're looking at the layer mask, it's all black, so it shows nothing. Now remember, well, first let's put it back here. So I'm going to Command I again, Command or Control I, and I'm going to move him just a little bit because I don't want his bill to have to be behind there. But we can work with that. We need to paint black on this mask where the pelican's middle is. So to do that, first let's make sure we have black as our foreground color. Right now we have white as our foreground color. But no matter what color's there, if you hit D, it will take it back to the default colors of white and black. Now, since white's the foreground color, but we want black to be the foreground color, just click X and it'll reverse them. So see now, see now black is our foreground color. And we're going to get a brush, and we're going to need to size the brush down a little bit. And we do that using the bracket keys, which are right next to the P key. So the left bracket makes it smaller, what we're doing here, and the right bracket will make it bigger, like that. Now, I'm going to work with a soft round brush, and we can look at that right up here in the brush menu. If your brush menu is not up, just go to Window and click Brushes, and your brush menu will come up. So we have our nice soft round brush, and we're going to go over here, and wherever the pelican is on top of the structure, we're just going to paint it out. See? There we go. And now it looks like the pelican is flying on the other side of the little structure. Nothing to it, right? Now let's take a closer look at our mask. If we hold down Option or Alt, depending on whether you're on a PC or a Mac, and click the layer mask, we get a big view of it here, and we can see this black spot right in the middle. I used a soft brush, so it's nice and fuzzy, but we see the spot in the middle. That's where the pelican's belly was. So that's what we painted out. That's just a quick way to see it. To get out of this view, just click somewhere else, and you'll go back to the normal view. Now let's try something else. Let's say we want to change the background of this picture of the giraffe. So let's place the background below the giraffe. But first we need to bring the background in. I'm going to change to my move tool. And this is the background we're going to use. And so I'm just going to click it and drag it over the giraffe. And now first thing we see is that it's not aligned correctly for the picture. So we're going to hit Control T to get our free transform. We're going to right click and we're going to rotate it 90 degrees. Clockwise, counterclockwise, doesn't matter. Now it's also a lot bigger than our giraffe picture. So we're going to hold down Command or Control and hit 0. And that's going to fill our screen so that we can see all the handles. And we're going to, there we go, size this to fit. Normally I would probably turn this into a smart object, except for when I'm using textures. Because if textures get a little bit granulated, it is not a problem. They're just there for texture. Let's move we got the texture layer underneath our giraffe. And so first thing we have to do is we want to make a selection, just like we did to get the pelican out. And in recent versions of Photoshop, the object selection tool works really well, and especially on a background like this. Let me get on the right layer. On a background like this, where it's very plain, all I have to do is click it. And there we go, we have our selection. So now, if we just add a layer mask, that layer mask remembered our selection, and what we selected is in white, and what we wanted covered up is in black. So what we didn't select is in black. So now we have the new background with the giraffe. So now let me show you something else though. Here's something you'll learn the farther into Photoshop you go. There's never just one way to do something. So let's say we had that layer on top. Well, now what do? We can't go over here and select the giraffe on the lower layer and put a mask there, because the mask only affects things above it. But I'll show you a little trick. First, let's go back to, well, I'm going to turn this layer off just so we can see what we're doing. We're going to go back, we're going to select our giraffe again, and then I'm going to turn that layer back on. Now, before we wanted the giraffe to be seen and everything else on the giraffe's layer to not be seen so that we could see the texture layer. But now, since the texture layer is on top, what we want to do is see the whole texture layer except for where the giraffe would be. So that's kind of the opposite of the mask we have. And so if we hold down Option or Alt, depending on whether you're on a Mac or PC, let me get up on the right layer, and then we do a layer mask, it does an inverse of the layer mask. So now you see where the giraffe is actually painted black now, and where everything else is painted white. So it made just the opposite of the mask we had before. Pretty cool, huh? But now let's say we wanted to reposition or resize the background. Well, watch what happens. So let's go to our free transform again, and let's drag this out. Look what happened to the mask. Now, we don't want that. Also, if we wanted to shift it a little bit, look what happens to the mask. That's not what we want. What we want is for the picture to get bigger, but the mask to stay the same. So let me explain to you why the mask gets bigger. It's because these two layers are linked. The layer mask and the layer are linked. So if you make one of them bigger, you make the other one bigger. But there's a way to unlink them. If you look right here in between our layer icon and our layer mask icon, there's a little thing that looks like chain links, and that means they are linked. And if we click that, it goes away, and now they're unlinked. So now let's make sure we have the texture selected. We do a Control V, and then we can shift, and look at that. The mask stays right where it should be. And we can make it bigger. See? And the same thing happens. And then once we're done, just go right back in where that chain link was and click, and the link comes back, and now we're all linked up again. Nothing to it. Now, watch this one. Let's take the elliptical selection tool. That's this one. And we're just going to draw a little sort of a circle around our giraffe. Like that. Let's use an adjustment layer that affects brightness. We could use curves, we could use levels, or brightness contrast. I usually prefer curves because it gives you more control, but for beginners, let's use brightness contrast. It's the easiest. So we'll pick that. And look at that. It gave us our layer mask with it, with our circle that we just did cut out. Unfortunately, what we're going to do here is we want to darken everything except for the giraffe's head so that he stands out. Now, our layer mask, whatever we do is only going to affect the giraffe's head. That's not what we want. So again, hold down Command or Control, depending on whether you're on a PC or a Mac, and hit I. And now, as you can see, it reversed. All that was white is now black, and all that was black is now white. Now we take this, we just go up to our little adjustment slider, and we darken it. Okay, that did what we wanted, but it doesn't look real good, does it? Okay, so how do we fix this? Let's go to our layer mask, and let's click on it, and now we have the properties for the layer mask. Now I'm going to show you what each of these do. First of all is density, and density does the same thing on a layer mask that opacity does on our normal layers. It just makes it more see-through. So if I start doing this, it just becomes more see-through. If I get to 0, everything's dark and our circle's gone. Okay, so that's not going to help us. But what we do have is feather. And what feather does is blur our mask. And that makes it softer. So let's just take this up. And we can see, there we go. Now we don't really see those strict edges anymore. So that looks so much better. So as you can see, we've got feather to be able to do that. Also on this properties panel, you've got select and mask. And if you recall from one of my previous videos where I took you through the whole select and mask on a big furry kitten, this is the same thing. If you click this, it will take you right to that. Invert does exactly what we've been doing with the Command I or Control I. It inverts. And then I don't use color range. I have an idea of what it does, but I think that's a little advanced for this beginner course. But let's continue on. You might be wondering if you can use a picture as a layer mask. And the answer is definitely yes. So I tell you what, I'm going to show you how to do it. Let's take this picture of some blueberries. And this is where we're going to work. Now, the first thing we need to do is we're going to add a solid color layer. And I want it to be black. And you'll see why in a minute. It is black. And I need it to be underneath the blueberry layer. Now, on the blueberry layer, we're going to create a layer mask by clicking our layer mask icon down here at the bottom. And then we're going to hold down Option or Alt, whether you're on a PC or a Mac. And I'm going to click the layer. So now we can actually edit the layer. Now I'm going to go over to this picture, which is in black and white. And because remember, a layer mask is black and white. So now we're going to take this and we're going to select everything by hitting Command or Control A, and then follow that by Command or Control C. And then we're going to go back to our blueberries. And as you can see, we have our layer selected and our layer mask selected. So we're going to hit Command or Control V. And as you can see, it's on there, but it is a little big. So if you recall, we do Command 0. I'm sorry, we have to do our free transform first. So Command or Control T, that brings up free transform. Then Command 0. Now we're going to take this and bring it in a little bit. There we go. Now, as you can see, we've got this stripe over here. I'm going to hit Command D or Control D, which will deselect what we had selected. There we go. Now you can see we've got this stripe over here, but easy peasy. We can just take our brush, and we have black selected, and so we just paint over it. I probably want a hard brush though. Let's go get a hard brush. That's going to be in general brushes, hard round. There we go. And all I have to be careful with is that I don't hit the actual picture over there. Okay, now we've got a black and white picture as our layer mask. Now if we just click away from it, that looks pretty cool. I think we should add a curves adjustment layer. And let's just bring the darks up just a little bit there. There we go. And now we've used a picture as a layer mask. And you can do that with anything on whatever kind of background you want. Nothing to it. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Will's Digitals. I hope you liked this or you found it helpful. If so, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It really helps the channel out. We'll see you in the next video.